Hello everyone, today we'll continue to go over the PMP certification question bank. Next, let's take a look at question 6. Question 6 is primarily about how, in order to prevent influential stakeholders from dominating product interaction decisions, the product owner decides to use what is the main advantage of using the planning poker technique? First, let's take a look at the 4 options. The first option A is that it helps the team plan activities during the iteration. Option B is that it allows for more accurate estimation. Option C is that it incorporates a technique similar to a brainstorming session. Option D is that it ensures the active participation of the project team. Alright, let's analyze this. First, regarding the advantages of planning poker, well, let's start with option B. Allowing us a more accurate estimate. This option B allows calculation with the main line, and now option D. Ensure the active participation of the project team. These two, in fact, both options B and D are advantages of planning poker. Both of these are correct. Planning poker is an estimation technique widely used in agile methodologies. Its main feature is that each team member uses a set of cards to provide their own estimates for specific tasks or features. This method encourages each team member to provide their own opinion rather than being influenced by others. The benefit of this is that it helps avoid bias and extreme thinking, ensuring that our estimates take into account a wide range of perspectives from everyone. In other words, the viewpoints of every member of the team can be considered, which makes our results more accurate. To ensure that the entire team can actively participate in the estimation process and prevent influential stakeholders from leading the delivery decision of the product. So here, both B and D are correct. We can see that B allows for more accurate estimates, which is the first point. The second point is to ensure that the team actively participates in the project. Both of these are correct. But what is in this question? It mentions that the purpose is to prevent influential stakeholders from dominating the product delivery decisions. So, in response to this issue, the corresponding advantage should actually be ensuring the active participation of the project team. That's more important. While both B and D are correct, the main point is, for this question, which one should we choose? We should choose option D. So here, everyone should pay attention. If you encounter similar content later on, remember that both B and D are correct options. If it's a multiple choice question, you can select both B and D, but if it's a single choice question, you can only pick the best one. So choose option D, that's our 6th question. Also, everyone should pay more attention to our PMP certification, right? There can be many correct answers, not just one. There might be 2, 3, or even 4 correct answers. For a question like this, both B and D are correct, and we need to choose the more accurate one between the two to answer. That's our 6th question. Alright, next let's take a look at the 7th question. Question 7. Here, first of all, we have a project that is in the later stage of execution. Pay attention to the keyworded in the later stage. The engineers insist at every meeting that they have never been consulted or informed about the project deliverables. However, as the project manager, we have already communicated thoroughly and have records of the engineers' approvals. So, what should the project manager do in this situation? So, first of all, in this case, this is still a single choice question. Let's look at the options below. Option A is to write a formal letter to the Human Resources Department, detailing the unprofessional behavior of the project engineers. Option B is to contact the supervisor of the project engineers and consider replacing the project engineer. Option C is to bring up this issue at the next meeting to remind all stakeholders of the project's objectives. Option D is to discuss with the project engineer to understand their concerns and reach an agreement on how to proceed in the future. Let's take a look at this part first. Here, a conflict has occurred. This question falls into the category where, while some conflicts have arisen in the scenario, this conflict is caused by concerns stemming from our team members or stakeholders. In this case, the main conflict is between our project engineer and the project manager. One party says they have never been consulted or informed about the project deliverables, while the other party, what can they do? They can provide valid evidence. In this situation, actually, relatively speaking, how to resolve this issue is actually more crucial. First of all, our objective is only one, which is to ensure the successful completion of the project to help the project be completed better. So when facing this kind of problem, especially when it comes to issues with team members or stakeholders, what should our first step be? It should be communication. Here, everyone should note that the first step is to communicate directly and understand the reasons behind their concerns. And then, we need to look for solutions. No matter what kind of conflict there is, the conflict itself is actually not important. What matters is how we resolve it. So the first step is to communicate in a timely manner to understand the reasons for the concerns. And then the second step is to start looking for solutions. This is a fundamental communication skill in project management, and it is also a proactive way to solve problems. This is the correct and constructive approach. So what should we do? We should discuss with the project engineer to understand their concerns and reach an agreement on how to proceed in the future. After we have discussed and communicated well about how to move forward, it will be more beneficial for our subsequent work. This is our 7th question. Here, no matter what problem occurs, in the end, the most important thing is to solve the problem. Solving the problem, no matter what happens, whether it's big or small, right or wrong, that's not important. Solving the problem is what matters most. This is our 7th question. Alright, next let's take a look at question 8. For question 8, when a project is completed, a project stakeholder asks the project manager for information about the overall project performance. Information about project performance in order to determine the success of the plan. So what should the project manager do to provide relevant information to the stakeholder? Here, it's basically at the end of a project, the stakeholder wants to get, right, a final result. So what should we do? First, option A is to update the project status report, including current performance information. Option B is to record key performance indicators in the final project report. Option C is to document project performance and influencing factors in the lessons learned register. Option D is to inform stakeholders that performance will be evaluated within 3 months after the project ends. Okay, these are our 4 options. So first, the stakeholder wants to use this information, right? What should we do now? In this case, first of all, our business stakeholders need a complete view to assess the overall performance and success of the project. This is a reasonable request, right? Key performance indicators are the critical metrics used to evaluate the success of a project. So, in the final project report, these should be thoroughly documented and presented to the stakeholders. Therefore, in this situation, so what exactly is option A? Actually, it has some issues. This option mainly focuses on the current status and recent progress of the project, rather than the overall project performance and its completion. Therefore, option A is actually incorrect, because our project has already ended, right? According to the context, since the stakeholders already need information about our performance, and as we mentioned in the first sentence, the project has already been completed. So at this point, if you still want to update the status report, right, that actually is no longer very effective. Option C, the lessons learned register, is mainly used to capture lessons and improvement suggestions during the project process. So it is not something provided to our external stakeholders. The project should have ended. Right? The project is already finished. Now, the most crucial point is to use our key performance indicators to measure whether our project was successful. If you wait 3 months after the project ends to evaluate, then it's actually too late. So what should we do for this option? We should choose option B, which is to record the key indicators, the key performance indicators, in the final project report. Therefore, for this question, we choose option B. Now, let's look at question 9. Question 9 is about a new government regulation that requires all team members to work remotely throughout the next iteration. This means there will be some changes to the priority of the product backlog items. What should our project manager do? First, option A is to inform the project sponsor about the new regulation at the next retrospective meeting. Option B is to inform the product owner of the required changes as soon as possible. Option C is to reprioritize the backlog items and share them with the team as soon as possible. Option D is to ask the team's facilitator to reprioritize the backlog items according to the new regulations. Alright, so here, first of all, in our project, the product owner is the key role responsible for managing and prioritizing the product backlog. If some external changes occur, for example, government regulations, right? If these might affect the execution of the project or the iteration, our project manager should inform the product owner as soon as possible so that they can make the necessary adjustments and reprioritize the backlog items accordingly. So which option should we choose? Everyone, take a look. First, option A. Telling them at the next meeting and thinking that's enough, well, is it really enough? When is your next meeting? What if it's a week later or even 2 weeks later? In that case, it's too late, right? Now that we have new regulations, we need to deal with this issue as quickly as possible. Yes, handle the issue as soon as possible. Option C is to reprioritize the backlog and share it with the team as soon as possible. Option D is to ask the team coordinator to coordinate according to the regulations. Both of these are actually about making quick adjustments within the team, right? At first glance, they seem fine, but neither of these two options mentions anything about our product owner. Because now that some changes have occurred, no matter what kind of modifications you make, what do you actually need? You actually need approval from our product owner. Permission, or in other words, their authorization. So here, what do we actually need? We need to promptly inform the product owner about any issues. If any new problems arise, we should determine what changes need to be made, right? After informing them and getting their approval, then we can proceed to implement, say, option C or D without any issues. This is a basic question for use option C. The power supply is correct, but the very first step we should actually take is to inform our product owner first and then carry out the specific actions that follow. Option A actually doesn't need to be considered as too slow, way too slow. So that's our 9th question. All right. Next, let's take a look at question 10. In question 10, a project manager working on a large-scale network implementation is feeling frustrated with a hardware supplier because their deliveries are always late and often missing critical components. So what about the project manager's company? They have decided to cancel the contract and switch to a new supplier, but the only available option is an overseas company. So what should our project manager do first to carry out this change? Know that, first, the change has already been confirmed, and second, what should be done first? Pay attention. What should be done first is actually quite similar to the previous question. That is, after a problem arises, what is the very first thing we should do? It's possible that all the options given are actually correct, but which one should we do first? There is definitely a specific order to follow. First, let's look at option A. Option A is to ask the purchasing department for help, right? To understand what to do next. Option B is to hire a translator who understands the project area. And option C is to determine whether to use a common contact person with a new supplier. To determine whether there is a shared contact for the new supplier and to check social media. How should I put it? This one, at first glance, is rather. Right? It seems pretty wrong, doesn't it? There are some issues with it. Now, option D is to learn about any cultural characteristics of the new supplier that might affect the negotiation. That's option B. Hiring a translator, right? Option D is to understand cultural characteristics and prepare for negotiations. The idea is to make connections, right? To find some new suppliers. Actually, these 3 options are the same. They're basically the same. By then, you're already preparing for the next round of negotiations, right? So option A is to ask the procurement department for help to understand what to do next. In this situation, when we're faced with a contract change or cancellation with a supplier, what's the first step? That is, you should communicate with the department responsible for contracts and supplier relations, right? The department that deals with suppliers, like the procurement department, actually has the closest contact with suppliers, right? So you should communicate with them because they have the experience and knowledge to handle these kinds of matters. They can provide the necessary guidance and advice. For example, if you need to find a translator or get contact information, you can turn to them. You need to get an understanding of the supplier's cultural characteristics. This is actually important. If you try to negotiate on your own and you don't have a deep understanding of these issues, it's actually very difficult to handle directly. So the first step is to ask the procurement department for help to understand the situation. Figure out what steps to take next, and then proceed. It's really a matter of sequence. In fact, for these 4 questions, there's nothing wrong with any of the 4 options. They're all correct. So what should you do first? Start gaining an understanding. You need to learn some knowledge in this area, understand the relevant issues, and then move on to the topic of negotiation. This is our 10th question. Here, with these questions, what can we observe? Many of the answer choices are actually correct, right? So one approach is to look among the correct options and find the one that fits best. Another approach is to determine what should be done first and what should be done later. Generally, the question asks us to choose what to do first, so the order of steps is quite important. Alright, that's all for today's content. If you need the complete question bank, you can leave a comment below to get the most reliable question bank at the best price. That's it for today, everyone. Bye-bye.